niveles. Sin embargo, esto empieza a cambiar. Empezamos a tener números un poco más comprometidos y prometedores. Quisiera quizás resaltar que el desarrollo sostenible solo es posible con las mujeres y con el cierre de brechas de género. Como mencionaba nuestra coordinadora del día de hoy, Eva, desde el Programa de Naciones Unidas existe este grupo que fue creado por el Foro de Ministras y Ministros de Medio Ambiente de América Latina y desde 2020 más de 20 países de la región están trabajando conjuntamente para la integración de las mujeres y un enfoque de género. Concluyendo, las agendas de desarrollo deben ser inclusivas, género responsivas y justas, incluyendo al sector privado. El sector privado y las mujeres dentro de la gerencia ambiental tienen un rol importante y crítico para disminuir y enfrentar crisis. El COVID, un ejemplo. Les deseo muy buen diálogo y que permita continuar avanzando en esta agenda que es crítica para el presente y sin lugar a dudas central para las futuras generaciones. Muchas gracias.
Many thanks, Jacqueline, for giving us that context, those important figures, information in the gaps and disadvantages that still today women and girls are confronting in Latin America and the region. That is precisely the intention, to make visible the role of women, both in public as in private scenarios. So once more, many thanks, Jacqueline. Now, to continue, I don't know if we have Madam Minister Maisa Rojas with us. Please confirm me if we have Madam Minister Maisa Rojas with it. Minister is connecting right now. So let's wait for a minute while she completes her connection. I'm going to share with you, taking advantage of this space, the webinar that we have organized for today. We have guests from the region of Latin America, that is to say, with whom we'll be sharing how has been the experience of women when it comes to the performance of their tasks and jobs environment. I mean, in the private sector, normally the experiences that we share are, let's say, refer to the public sector, but now we have considered to include the vision, the perspective of many women that are contributing for what Jacqueline mentioned to us, justice, sustainability, that will be guaranteed provided we have active and equitative participation. Now, I'm going to leave you with Diana Rodriguez, Economic Affairs Official and Gender, who will be making a presentation about the economic autonomy of women in Latin America and the Caribbean. Challenges and an outlook. Diana, thank you. Can you see my screen now? Yes, we see there. Good. So many thanks. Start by greeting distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure for me to be here with this presentation and participate in the ministerial webinar. I want to share this presentation with you because I want to give you some elements for context and to expand more what different aspect that Jacqueline told us. But at the end of the presentation, we can understand the barriers and roadblocks that exist in the region and contribute with some analytical tools for the debate that will take later during this webinar. some of the key messages that we want for you to take away. First, the structural nodes of gender inequality in Latin America and Caribbean are persistent barriers for the full participation of women in the labor market and to achieve, of course, their economic autonomy. Pandemics have deepened these structural nodes and above all make evidence the overload of non-remunerated work and care that are in the shoulders of women. And Jacqueline mentioned that in their open speech. And these structural nodes are manifested in the private sector in different ways. They could be, let's say, few women in high leadership positions, segregation of functional areas, and wage gaps that we will be discussing more in a little bit. Now, I would like also to contribute with some reflections about this question. There exist different dynamics from a gender perspective for environmental companies in Latin America and Caribbean. And what do I'm talking about when I refer to structural nodes in this quality? Well, basically, we put over the table these four structural nodes: social, economic, and poverty and equality, sexual division of work, and unfair organization of care, social culture patterns that are discriminatory in concentration of power. And I have here some figures that illustrate what these nodes means. I'm not going to stop or detail over them because I hope to go deeper in some of these later on. Gender inequality is a structural feature in our region, and pandemics have made this structural nodes deeper because women have been dampening the effects of the crisis with inequality, poverty, domestic work, non-remunerated work, and of course, worsening of the living conditions. Participation of women in the labor market, as this graph shows, well, shows a significant drop. As you can see, the level that existed back in 2020, well, now we have backward. We have like going back 18 years in participation of women. It has increased a little lately, but there's a trend, however, that has kept more or less constant in time. And it means that two women does not participate in the labor market. And this is due to barriers such as a work overload, non-remunerated work, as we heard before, the less valuation of women, participation in society, and discrimination that punish maternity leaves and have, let's say, grave consequences in labor opportunities to be promoted in existing positions. Now, this graph show us that there is a segregation in labor, different sectors across the region where women participate. We see here that 56.9% of women are occupied in sectors that were more prone to lose jobs as a result of the pandemics. And these are on the left-hand side. Manufacturing, trade, tourism, non-remunerated homework. Women are concentrated more in teaching and healthcare, sectors that were highly impacted, what we call first line during the pandemics. Another structural node, quite important, and we need to consider for our region, is the culture of the privilege that of course translates into multiple discrimination factors that cross, let's say, between ethnics and gender. In this graph, we see that we analyze remuneration by school or education. Women are located in the lower part of the scale, notwithstanding they have a similar education to women, to men. And that is what is in the bottom of the graph, that line. And I would like to focus in this slide because this is one of the structural nodes that we have mentioned several times before. But really, it's one of the most critical ones because as you can see for women, the sexual division of work and the unfair remuneration means that women dedicate on a daily basis triple the time that men to the same domestic or to home care task. The total workload is greater than men then. And this is important because they also have some repercussions when it comes to the business environment. And we see the gender disequalities are manifested here in different ways. For instance, here is a graph that comes from figures of IT, the International Labor Organization, that show the evolution of the jobs when it comes in direct positions in the region. As we can see in the graph, there has been some progress, but very, very slow. And this covers a period of term of 28 years, very slow, the progress of women when it comes to steering positions. And this is comparable to figures Europe and North America, but participation of women is still low, very low. Another important point to highlight is that gender segregation depending on the type of functions women perform at steering positions. It is shown here that women, when they are in steering position, tend to concentrate more in assistant areas such as human resources, finance, and administration. In contrast, men to be majority in operations, research and development, those that are considered more strategic for the business, and then they can jump to higher management positions from there. And the wage gap, it exerts a clear pressure over gender disequality and inequality. This is figures that come from International Labor Organization from 18 countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. In most cases, the gap is quite significant, exceed 10% when compared to the total number of employee or workers. And in 3 countries, the gap between managers and lower echelons is even wider, like Peru, Aruba, and Bolivia. Peru is the one that is in the bottom of the graph. There is a difference of exceeds 30%. Now, what do we know about women when it comes to the management of environmental companies? Now, the truth is that very little. The answer is that it's difficult to know with available data, at least with business surveys, because it's difficult to identify the way these positions are classified in environmental management companies, and there is no homologation at regional level or international level, not to mention the standardization. Some figures that we found, Irene, is that women are employed in the renewable energy sector with 32% on average, but are concentrated in administrative tasks and to a less proportion in technical, STEM, and STEM works, actually. And this is another graph showing the participation in the energy sector. As you can see here, women in a high management position in the energy sector is 1 out of 10, at least when it comes to renewable energy. And this is pretty low, of course, but however, there's 10% more participation of women when it comes to renewable energy sectors in general against 22% of conventional energies, which is a quite interesting figure. And to start closing this presentation, there are several arguments about the importance of promoting the participation of women in the labor market in general. There are some let's say, arguments that come from ILO. We in CEPAL are working pro of gender equality, including, of course, economic autonomy and as a target to be reached. And that means that we need to think on a post-pandemic recovery and changes that need to be accomplished for a fair development and to consider this perspective from all corners. It's necessary to promote participation of women in sectors that will be key for that recovery. We want to have a sustainable development that considers gender equality and good environmental management at the same time. And for that, it's necessary to consider the need to address these new structural nodes that I have been showing and explaining to you. These are some of the dynamizing sectors that we have identified. As you can see, many of them are related to the environmental sector, like renewable energy, circular economy. Well, it becomes necessary to, well, I congratulate this initiative because it's necessary, important to have more women in these sectors, and today more than ever when it's necessary to move forward in recovery in pro of sustainability and gender equality in all sectors. And that's my presentation. Thanks a lot to all of you for being with us and here. I stop sharing my screen now. Many thanks, Diana, for showing that outlook, regional outlook and figures about the participation of women when it comes to private environmental management. Sad to hear that COVID-19 pandemics came to, let's say, worsening these structural nodes that you have identified so far. But of course, we need to see this as a challenge that let's say, affect all of us, those participate in private as public sectors and in each economic sector so that they can start working for the collection of data, first of all, because we heard from you that there's very little information that can be collected. But we have figures about the wage gaps, we have figures about the positions, management positions occupied by women, and what positions are being more occupied by women than any other. So that's a reflection for all of us so that we can add ourselves to this challenge and see how we will overcome the difficulties to this structural node. Now, I've been told that we have now with us, Madam Minister Maisa Roja, Minister for the Environment Chile and representative of Gender Environmental Group for Latin America, who will be pronouncing opening words and a message for our mission. So, Madam Minister, you have 10 minutes and the floor is yours. Thanks a lot. Apologize for technical difficulties that really hindered me to be with your group at the time it should be. But now I had the opportunity to see and hear the presentations. And yes, on one hand, it's quite concerning how we have gone back in women participation in labor market, for instance, across the region, but also good opportunities out there so that the women incorporation to those tasks that we heard about, well, can actually help reinforce the climate crisis actions. But I would like to start by thanking the organizers of this webinar, the Ministry for the Environment, Salvador, Guatemala, on behalf of the regional group of Gender and Environment for Latin America and the Caribbean that I preside, and the Program of the United Nations for the Environment as well. The gender group starts as the gender decision under the Forum of Ministers for the Environment, Latin America and the Caribbean back in 2021. And since that date, Chile has been honored to exert chairmanship. Happily enough, we have been re-elected to have that position for a second term and handed out that position with 100% compliance of our working plan to our successor. Thanks to FIEP for supporting such an important event carried out last March this year, and participating countries for trusting the work carried out by Chile to date. Now, this partnership will allow us to implement a pilot project to carry out, let's say, formation, civil society, and the planting and collection, the harvesting for the second half of this year. Now, for this new government of Chile, it's essential to address climate crisis from a broad perspective, understanding that when we are in charge of the challenges posed by the climate crisis, we are assuring not only of seeing a reduction of emissions that we need to accomplish to mitigate the crisis, but also the overall care of the environment, the overall care biodiversity and procure social welfare so that we can reach the sustainable development goals of the 2030 agenda. That is, when we confront the climate change crisis, means all commitments that we have adopted and value so much as a society. The alignment of these agendas is translated to what we have denominated a social, economic, ecological transition that is fair. That is, a transition is a process in which we need to transform our development model towards a society low in carbon emission, but also equitative, to put in the center the persons ecosystems part of this vision, and gender topics are cross-cutting to all this. And with this vision, let's say we have carried out the work so far during past years in the ministry. And even though most of targets achieved have been focused in climate change, we are working right now in different topics to thanks a lot. No, I was saying we are trying to prioritize this gender perspective in the ministry, that it goes beyond mere climate crisis and different topics that we need to address from the ministry, and so that they can be incorporated and therefore generate environmental policy with a cross-cutting gender focus, led by the new Office of Gender Equality and Human Rights that we hope to have in full capacity during my term in office. Now, during this first half of the year, we have dedicated to strengthen environmental topics and gender equality. That is why last week we carried out sensibilization work directed to ministries, and we open a call for a second version of a course for gender and climate change. Different from the first version, we have included now contents about ecofeminism, inclusive language, and inclusion dictionary or glossary. We are very happy that positions were filled in the very first day, but I also want to inform you that by the end of June, we will be opening a new call with 400 positions for this course directed to the citizens at large, not only of Chile, but also for other Latin American countries. We are making all efforts possible so that the Escazú Treaty can be finally approved and ratified by Chile. We shan't forget that this treaty is essential to achieve all climate environmental objectives from a perspective of human rights, strengthening our democracy, and aiming at having what we call environmental justice. And this is the only treaty in the world that have specific provisions for human rights defenders, especially those that are more focused on environmental topics. And this is important because, regrettably, our region is one of the most dangerous ones for those defenders of environmental topics. Studies show this dramatic reality of threats, intimidation to these people, and it's an ethic imperative to protect them. Now, today, more than ever, we will continue establishing partnerships and promoting efforts from this environmental ministry together with the Ministry for Women, so that structural changes that are required can be implemented on an effective basis. But we shouldn't forget that we must do that together with the civil society and private sector. We will assure the cross-cutting effort of gender focus and with climate crisis, addressing the crisis of care overall, so that we can procure a sustainable, inclusive, and resilient development. The future is feminist. Many thanks to you all. Many thanks, Madam Minister, for your kind words. So inspiring, really your commitment, your work, your vision is something that we need to applaud. And no doubt that from the chairmanship of this group you lead, we can achieve the 100% of the working plan that the group outlined for the near future. And very happy that you have been re-elected to assume the position. It's a vote of confidence for the commitment of Chile has assumed of the climate agenda. I take your words, an inclusive agenda, resilient, and of course, fully committed for all. Greetings from Salvador, and many thanks for being here with us. Thanks to you. Thank you. Greetings to all of you who have connected with us from YouTube. We have greetings from different countries of the region: Mexico, Bolivia, Uruguay, Colombia, Dominican Republic. I do no doubt that there is a participants from each Latin American country and the Caribbean. Now, let's continue with our agenda. Now, we have another presentation about 4 experiences we want to share with you today. These 4 experiences that will be shared with you. In there, we will address one question, and this question is, what has been the main actions implemented so far in your experience to promote the participation and empowerment of women in private businesses and in your productive sector, especially? And so each participant can answer to this question. After that, we have a panel um, to whom we will be making 2 additional questions. So without further ado, I want to welcome Vanessa Prieto, professor and coordinator of master's degree of sustainability program at Pontifice Javeriana University, and Andres Mejia, professor and director of master's degree and innovation management and strategic participation of Savannah University. Both of them are here with us from Colombia. Let me remind you that you have 5 minutes for that, and 1 minute to that. I will power on my camera so that you know your time, remaining time, you can conclude. So, and Vanessa and Andres, the floor is yours. Good morning. We want to tell you, to answer that question, we want to tell you the experience research that we are conducting about that in Colombia. As we have seen so far, it's well known, the high management and steering positions in companies normally being led by men. Even according to our inquiries, we have seen how 70% of these positions at worldwide level are only managed by women, or performed by women. But in Colombia, the situation is very much alike. However, we are researchers in sustainability, circular economy areas, and when we were conducting our work, we found that there are many women in sustainability positions, sustainability management. This means that directorates, coordinations, vice presidencies that manage this important area. So thinking about that and finding out more, we discovered that there was not clear reasons why there were so many women in this position. We created an hypothesis. There were more women than men in management, in sustainability management positions, sustainability management positions. So within the framework of WIN, this is a network that promotes the role of women in innovation ecosystems, funded by CITEL. We started to develop this project to try to characterize and understand what are the main features of, let's say, feminine management when it comes to sustainability, and understand why these figures are the ones they are. And Vanessa will tell us a little bit more about this. Yes, the Sweden framework network, really, from this business sustainability from Javeriana University. We started by conducting a survey, and the first hypothesis is that we believe that women having a dominant position in sustainability areas in companies and businesses. And we investigated different positions, coordination, vice president, and manager. And the other was saying this is a challenge because the positions are not standardized. There's many people working in sustainability, but their position in particular changes a lot. And there's 300 persons, over 72% of them are women. So the first hypothesis was confirmed. Then we decided to conduct a second, more deeper detailed survey with 44 participants. They told us about the role, of course, gender, demographic characteristics, and what were the responsibilities of their positions. We found that out of those 44 persons that answered the survey, that was much in detail, as I said before, 57% of them live with their partner, 44% were women, and that was a quite balanced answer. Over 70% of them have postgraduate degree studies, something interesting. Wages, over half of them, wages in excess of 1,200 euros, and 11% wages in excess of 4,000 euros per month. And then going over the skills and abilities they need to perform their position and responsibilities, we found that most of them, over 80%, spend most of the time in developing the sustainability and communication strategy of the entire organization. That is so. And the design of the sustainability strategy includes social environmental sustainability. Positions that normally have these two responsibilities. On the other hand, they have another important responsibility, and that is training and the increase of awareness around environmental topics throughout the organization. I mean, the staff, so sustainability is not an isolated element of one area, but to be rather cross-cutting throughout the company. And they have other operative roles dedicated to, let's say, move forward certifications. And to conclude and show you the results of research, we see that definitely participants consider that they belong to diverse, equitative companies where they have been promoted because of their merits and not because of gender. That can indicate, well, some because if the company has a sustainability area, we can imply that they have an intention of getting rid of that, what we call the crystal roof, to be promoted. So we can conclude that definitely we need to continue working on the skills and ability these persons have when they work in sustainability so that they can develop further strategies that actually go at the core of the organization, and training of the entire staff so that can generate more awareness, knowledge, and concern among the staff of the responsibility the company has. Many thanks to you. Okay, many thanks, Vanessa and Andres, for your participation. Quite interesting. My congratulations for that study. Quite interesting, as I said before. We other countries can consider this as a good practice. Maybe we can take our own time to conduct our own studies in our own countries so that we can collect enough information, move let's say little by little, increase the participation of women in each one of these economic sectors. So many thanks to you once more. Now let's continue with the presentation of Cassandra Abigail Portillo. She is the chairwoman, rather say, of Farmers Baskets and agricultural practices, their experience of the participation of role in this cooperative. So Cassandra, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes for that. Hello, good morning for you all. I want to thank you for this lot of time, for giving us the opportunity to participate in this beautiful webinar. And just to tell you that, so I can go into my topic about the experience. Just to say that I am the president of a cooperative association formed by producers. Most of them are quite young. We been 9 years now to be legally incorporated as a cooperative at approximately 70% of associates or partners of this cooperative are women, young women, and others that are not so young, and the remaining are young men. Because at that time, when we had this project in man, our sector was very much affected. So for us, cooperative and canasta campesina, the farmers' basket, that is, uh, we are farmers in this Libertad districts, and our only what we did before was to remain at home doing home care, but currently we are out there producing organic uh, food, helping our families and our community with that. Um, we are very much involved. Right now, 117 persons are part of this cooperative, and the main objective is food security. Now, in the case of for women, it's easier to address these topics because we are the ones in charge of the administration of our family, so to speak. For us, it's very important to oversee the overall care of a family. So food security was one of the main objectives. Um, most persons were used to receive. What we're going to receive, that was the question. But with the cooperative, the objective is to, let's say, procure our own food, self-sustainable, that is to say. And that was one of the main objectives. And after that, and once that objective was achieved, let's say, we will work hard deeply in food security, meaning that we started to commercialize this excess food or surplus of vegetables that we produce, not only what they produce, but what our neighbors produce, and we had extra economic income as a result of that. And women were always not pending of their husbands, and husbands gave them the money for the food of the family. And we need to also consider the clothes of the children, the education of the children, what I needed myself as a woman and mother. But with this project of the Canasta Campesina, the farmer's basket, we started to receive extra income and we became self-sustainable. In the beginning, men didn't believe very much in us that this was not feasible, because the belief was that women cannot produce. But our production model was not to have big areas of space, because most women here do not have land of their own. Um, uh, uh, Most of the land is inherited to the elder brothers and men, but that is not the daughters. So, but we started to commercialize and start to provide food for our home. We have extra income. We could buy our own things that coming from the sale of our products. We became more independent, so to speak. And now a meeting was not a waste of time for us. It was more seen as a training. And the cooperative, we have been working a lot in training and formation. We need to form ourselves of women and the rights of women, especially. And the economy for us, self-sufficiency was quite important. This was a topic that was addressed from the very beginning. Also important to say that we, women, need to transmit this message, this experience to other women, because it's like showing the other women an example of what we have achieved. Oftentimes, we don't know, for instance, that we are suffering from violence. So we need to transmit this message so women, other women can avoid that and empower themselves. But for that, we need to provide training. The fact of being farmers is a limitation. Most women do not have enough education, studies, and they feel like they are kind of in the lower part of the echelon of society. So we have been help in that. We can help motherland, Mother Earth, that because that is the one that gave us the food, and be happy producers. Uh, and as I said before, we are commercializing what we have called a short circuit economy, like vegetables that comes in these baskets. They are, let's say, provided directly to the consumer with no intermediaries or brokers. That's something that we also teach women of others areas. I think that's all for my part. Thanks a lot for this opportunity and for everything I'm learning. That is important for me to participate so I can learn more and tell others about our experience in the cooperative. Uh, there were uh, today about 70% of the steering management positions are occupied by women, most of them pretty young, and we are providing to the community what we, because actually what we are working for is for community development. And now, thanks a lot. Thanks, Cassandra, for sharing with us your experience and show us how empowerment process for women can lead to gain this economic autonomy that you mentioned, that at the same time guaranteed food security for all of you, for your family. And after that, to generate a business model, that business model that has become an example. The country is going in the right direction thanks to the experience of you in Komesawa. All right, let's continue with this webinar. We are going to have with us Jose Luis Beltran, co-founder and operations director in Mexico Recicla. Be telling us the gender-focused experience that his company have. Jose Luis, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes for your presentation. Good afternoon, all. Many thanks for having me here with you. I'm going to show you a couple of slides, or one slide only. The pictures that we have, I have there of our plant or factory. Yes, we can see that. Okay, I am Jose Luis. To put you in context, Mexico Recicla is a family company that was born 26 years ago in the city of Mexico. We're dedicated to recycle plastic, post-consumer plastic, and we are right now recycling over 15,000 tons per year. What actions have we implemented in Mexico Recicla? First of all, and that's the starting point, the policy of the company is to contract 60% of women in our position so that we can provide them economic independence, social security. And that is because we are in a municipality that has the highest rate of women murders. Catepec was the number one, actually. So from there, this necessity came to support this person that need, let's say, this type of support and to provide economic independence, food security. We don't have not a single worker that is not enjoying social security, duly affiliated to social security. And everything according to the law. We don't pay anything under the table, so to speak, but in full compliance of regulations so that we can provide food security. And apart from that, in our production lines, right now we have 15 of those. Those that contract for those production lines are women, as you can witness in our pictures. Women have that kind of perception, good perception, identifying materials much quicker and better than men. And this is something we have evidence, witnessed in the past 26 years. We don't know why, but it's something that is true. It's kind of a rule of thumb. Plastic residues that arrive to our plant on a daily basis, women, just by seeing the brand or how this material is felt at the touch, they can identify that and do a good separation of plastics. And that's the main column, let's say, of our operations. Now, a new high technology production lines, our objective is to have 50% of women now to work in this line. There are lines that involve technology with programs that require training. For instance, before we had only men, but right now minimum 50% women, so that they can, let's say, express their technical abilities and skills in this high technology production line. We also provide technical training and social training. Every month we have training provided by an external party that is imparted to our women. Um, and psychologists, if they say have a special need, they are being provided with support. We also conduct many things so they feel part of the company. They're being taken care of. Mm, in 2017, in administrative management position, we have 10% women nowadays. And uh, let's say with this new restructuring, we are uh, right now in 2022, we have 45% of women in administrative and management positions. And our goal is by 2023, next year, we will have 60% of women in our administrative and management position. This is important, as you can see, because the previous administration, we were kind of restricted. But with a new management and administration, let's say, we are including new areas under that scope. In engineering, we have a process engineer there. In uh, administrative engineering. Uh, there are others engineering positions that are more specialized, but we are trying to include or to get rid of this restriction or constraints so that it cannot be adapted to these positions. Human resources, well, we have also goes very much hand in hand with the Human Resources Administration, our company. Uh, it means that care if you are women or men or your age, we work like in ranges and band, and if you fulfill the requirements, you can be contracted. No matter if you are 18 years or 55 years old, if you're women or men. If you fall into this job description for that particular activity, you are given that opportunity. We have economic life plans in place. In Mexico, this is common, especially in SMEs. So actually, what this means is that we provide loans so that women can build their homes or expand their current homes, so they can buy a car um, or to pay debts with banks that are charging high interest rates. So we lend them money so they can go and cancel those debts. And the payment is directly discounted from the payroll, but of course not as aggressive, so to speak, as a bank when they lend money. And this is a big help for them because in that way they can fund many of their activities. And this part of the economic independence for women, especially for women, they are suffering from violence in their homes, and they come like borrow the money and they buy land and build their own home, and they become independent, get rid of that violence they were suffering before. We also have this perk bonus for new projects with the head of an area or maybe with us directly. They say, okay, I have this project in mind. I think that this very much aligned with your company, and we support her, and we provide this bonus for them. And they benefit because they actually work in that new project. We work in plastic residues, for instance. In a company, Mexico, a company produces something that is not a part of our line or duly identified. I've said before, they know very well how to identify. And we don't know if that new product can be recycled or not. Well, that experience of them help us to identify these new materials, and we sat down with those selecting girls, the girls that select the products, and we have full information about the product. In Mexico, Rica, we like to say we provide a triple impact of women, economic, social, environmental, that is. Environmental, we are recycling 15,000 tons of plastic per year. They are not going to the dump sites anymore, no to ecosystem, rivers or water streams, but they are coming back to the economy. And the social and economic, well, is both of them are directly related because we are helping many women. The Catepec area, as I told you before, is one of the most complicated ones when it comes to violence in Mexico, maybe even in Latin America. And economic, because all this, as I also told you, we have just completed a study. We have injected in the last 4 years $20 million to the recycle economic change. $20 million that would not go to the big companies so that they can buy virgin raw material, but actually to those women that are work on the residues so they can be injected again to the economy. This is something we want to highlight. Well, I think that's all my part. Thanks a lot. I'm not sure if I exceeded my time. Yeah, only a little bit, only a little bit. Yeah, we're quite excited telling us about your comment. Well, but I have just finished. Well, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Jose Luis. Truly quite interesting, that experience of yours. And if we look the figures, the structure, that we were shown at the beginning, many of these actions that we are taking are actually answering now those structural notions as to close the gaps that still persist between men and women when it comes to economic participation and labor participation. So briefly, Jose Luis, for time considerations, I have 2 questions for you. The participants have posed, we would like you to address, maybe in 30 seconds, 1 minute. How do you achieve the involvement of women so they can participate in the project? And what is the main motivations they have, let's say, to participate more or beyond the labor opportunity they're being given? Well, economic remuneration, they are the ones that stay day in, day out in the production line, and they know what material it is, what brand it is, what characteristics have. They know, so to speak, how the consumers buy it, and they know those brands, and they would also know if that product has gone one recycling step or not. It's kind of a contest so that they can win the product. I identified 3 new products that we never saw before. That this called a healthy competition. It's kind of contest, and they receive economic remuneration for that. And to end this round of presentation, I want to invite Tania Tamariz. She is the sustainability manager of Guayaquil Bank in Ecuador. She'll be talking to us about sustainability management and the finance sector. Tania, the floor is yours. Thank you, Eva. Good morning, all. Really, as Eva said, I'm Corporate Governance Sustainability Manager at Guayaquil Bank. And today I would like to share with you some reflections and also my opinion that I have seen of practices that I have seen in the banking sector does not necessarily express the position of Guayaquil Bank. They are more like my own. So I'm allowed to share with you some slides that show perfectly what this role is all about. Please allow me to share. In the meantime, I want to tell you that I found myself pretty, identify myself with Vanessa Herlan mentioned in respect to that 30% of women that are performing the role of sustainability manager, because in part of our responsibilities, I mean, the development of this sustainability agenda exists in the bank and other sector, but we need to supervise and the performance of communication around that. And that communication we cannot, let's say, leave aside. Both Vanessa, as Andres Hernan mentioned, I also like about not forgetting this role of integrating, educating, and to raise awareness about environmental and social topics, part of you all. I think I've been enabled to share, well, precisely the first reflection that I would like to show has to do with this. This is something I have seen throughout the financial sector. And sustainability management is not really a profile of a management that relates directly with clients. It's actually a position that has to do a lot with institutional partners, with other financial institutions, with other stakeholders and NGOs, among others. In our case, we work a lot with non-banking correspondents. And in the time of pandemics, we discovered that over 67% of these non-bank correspondents were being directed or managed by women. So it's quite important to have a good relationship with them, to get to know what are the needs of women that are performing these positions. On the other hand, this management tries to strengthen all these bridges, or rather say generate connections with other manager women that are already occupying management positions. And I believe we need to contribute to eliminate what is being called the uh, less valuation or less appreciation of this position by women. We find quite often that when these positions are being promoted, to start providing credit to them, there are other areas that are being led by men. Uh, and oftentimes we find a first barrier, because there's kind of bias if they are occupied already by men. We are also interested in training and informing, so as to avoid the bias. Uh, Not only women, but men, of course, but so they can identify, get to know how to go around these bias problems. Not only should we train our business areas, but and let's say credit analysts. Sad to say, but in some financial institutions, even the credit analysts are, let's say, go against other women. So we need to train this, no, both men and women about getting rid of the bias and to take that to the entire uh, organization. Finally, I would like to say that there are also certain maturity levels in each banking institutions, and these maturity levels need to be been taken out about mere social management, administrative, energy efficiency, and become more like a strategic role. More strategic role that integrates all of the areas, because this role, what it's looking for is to make sure that other areas move forward, not only in development of new businesses, generated new revenue for each bank, for instance, but we want to develop rather areas that have to do with human talent that, of course, are interconnected with other risk areas. That is all of my part, my presentation. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Tanya, for giving us that good outlook and share with us your experience, how from the financial sector that commitment becomes quite visible, especially environmental and gender topics. It's interesting to see how in your sector you can help to overcome those barriers and bias, as you mentioned, quite important, that are normally found in banks, for instance, against women, so that they can to start having access to funding and to finance products. All right, so we now conclude with that presentation. We conclude with 6 presentations that show us experiences. Thanks to you all for sharing with us and for making a call to reflection about the role that women performing and that need to perform in the private sector in Latin America. Now we are going to have a quick, short panel. We deal with 2 questions that I will be posing to the participants. I'm going to ask you, please, to unite or link yourself to this transmission, to this broadcast, so we can start answering the first question. I don't know if Diana is still with us. Diana is still with us. Yeah, being told she needs to leave. But thanks, Diana. Thanks a lot for your presentation. So let's continue with Vanessa and Andres. And the questions there. What are the main barriers that have been identified so far so that women can integrate on environmental management in the private sector in equality terms? Vanessa and Andres, are you there with us? Can you please power on your microphones and cameras so we can see you? No, I think they're having some technical difficulties to join this panel. Yeah, maybe let's go to Cassandra then. Cassandra, what are the main barriers that are visible to hinder the performance of women in the private sector? Hello. Well, from my point of view, we are working with the community because one of the limitations here oftentimes has to do with knowledge. Many women are not given the opportunity to participate because it's often thought that we don't have the right capacity to perform. Lack of knowledge by part of women. And the other thing has to see that many women have families to take care of. So they are tied up, so to speak, with their children, need to take them to school, pick them up again, and women need to, let's say, make sure that the children, when they go back to home, they do their homework, and also to take care of their husband. That, of course, restricts the opportunity to participate. And before, in Comasagua, for instance, the different positions or persons, that exert management positions were men, and they denied the opportunity for women to participate. And of course, an organic farming, for instance, for us, it was to break that no, the notion that we were not able to cultivate. But now we have been doing that for 9 years. We have shown that we are quite capable, and even we can sponsor more women, encourage them, and tell them that they can also do the same we are doing. And that is a limitation. As I said, we don't see the work that is being conducted from the community and the development the community is having that respect. And municipalities need to be aware and need to provide opportunities for women to participate. Previously, women do not attend the meetings, and because of that, they were not knowledgeable of what was going on. Our contribution is quite important in that regard. Thanks, Cassandra, for that. Vanessa and Andres are ready. They're now with us. What can you tell us about from the research point of view? Can you share experience from Colombia? From the research we have conducted, what we see in the focus groups that we have open around sustainability, we see that consider that women is the best person to perform that. When we, let's say, need to go maternity leave, that's a constraint, of course. But in general, the research showed that teams are mostly conformed by women, the working teams, work groups. This challenge, which I said, that is not real because the person that goes and replaces the mother who is suspected that is on maternity leave, it's another woman. This is not a true barrier. However, what we have been able to talk with men consider that sustainability management positions are well suited for women, because women have a special characteristics of providing care, care for persons, care for the environment, care for the planet. That's quite valuable. Another thing to highlight here, these are uh, opportunities where they need to relabor with other areas of the company. And for that, they should have good communication skills. Uh, Certification of certain skill. Well, women have them that capability of speaking well, of getting along very well with others, and being respectful. No, these certifications are very difficult to obtain, but women can help other women in procuring them. We also have seen that women are in those positions because many of these sustainability areas have gone from a transformation to communication initially and then sustainability later on, kind of transformation. And in that those communication areas were, let's say, occupied by women. And they come also from commercial positions as well, not only from communication. Thanks a lot, Vanessa and Andres. Let's continue with with Jose Luis. What can you tell us about the main barriers or constraints that you have seen according to your experience in Mexico? You have 1 minute, Jose Luis. I think a couple of them. The first one have to do with that archaic old thought thinking the companies have, old-fashioned. No, they have been thinking like that for many, many, many years in the plastic and recycle industry. I have lived that, I have witnessed that it should be managed only by men. That is one of the first barriers that philosophy, way of thinking company have. National, international companies now are beginning to change. That is not a barrier anymore for them. But in Mexico still exists in many quarters that way of thinking. Number two, the think the worker think that that is the way it should be because their father occupied that position, his grandparents, so forth. The mothers were confined to home. No, and they don't demand a change. And if a company finds this type of partner, let's so to speak, in a man, then there is no change possible, and diminish the possibility for growth of this person. Well, namely women are part of families. So I think from both sides, companies and workers. Many thanks, Jose. Thanks to all of you for your valuable contributions. Now we move to the second and last question of this panel. Oh, yeah, so sorry, so sorry. Yeah, in respect to the barriers, I can tell you that when all departments, let's say, of the banking industry are being transformed, some difficulties pop up. As I said in the beginning, the difficulties come from the leadership composition that already exists. Many of these teams or groups are have a predominant presence of men and lack of interest, so that new environmental, social, and governance criteria can be implemented. There is resistance on part of some executives, and that poses a difficulty for our role. Regrettably, it's sad to see that in our region, we still need a lot of women part of the board of directors and high management positions in most banks, and not many women vice president. That will be quite important in the decision-making process. And if they are not there, there won't exist any mobilization towards this transformation. Thanks, Tanya. Apologies for forgetting you. So, as I was telling you before, we are going to conclude with the second question. That question reads, what are the main recommendations to overcome these obstacles that you have just mentioned and increase the role of women, environmental sustainability, and management positions in different companies. There's recommendations for authorities, but also for women organizations and for the public at large that are connected with us this webinar. So, Vanessa and Andres, um, let's start with you. What will be your recommendations for companies and for women that want to, let's say, be part? You have 1 minute. Literature shows that organizations that are more diverse and equitative are more profitable. We are not talking here only about implement sustainability. That should be a kind of conviction, and that should be the main purpose. But this is a question of profitability. The most diverse and equitative companies, those that have the highest overall KPIs, or indeed they are more resilient. For instance, um, prone to less risk. We have an expert here with us about that, like the representative of the Guayaquil Bank. But also training, something that we need to highlight. In Javeriana University, we have just launched a master's degree in sustainability management because we consider that managers and leaders of sustainability need to be trained in areas such as social innovation, ecological innovation, circular economy, human rights, work with communities, but above all, to understand sustainability as an endless source of competitiveness in the organization. New areas that can be part of a study. In implemented, they give more opportunity, not always to be aligned in the same thing, all engineers, all administrators, all economists. No, there are important opportunities. And the studies show us women have more opportunities when it comes to these new areas of knowledge. It would be quite interesting that they can go and study more about these topics than my colleague here mentioned. Many thanks, Vanessa and Andres, for your opinion. Now we move to Cassandra. What would you recommend from your experience? What would be, you have 1 minute here. Well, from our experience, what you have seen is that the fact women, they train, they're more independent, and that they have their own source of income means that those women like more and more what they do, and that take it as a way of life. As I told you before, we are cooperative women and young persons that produce in an agroecological way. So the concept is to get ownership of that concept of the care of the environment, for instance, and do work, transgenerational work. Uh, we are moving this information, everything we are learning from to our children, nephews, etc. And as cooperative, we are doing a very interesting work with a project where the green awareness work with all schools of Comesawa. And there we discuss climate change, food security, and gender equality. This is an education imparted to children in the schools, and in that way, we can help women, help them to exert positions in the municipality, that is council or administrative positions, the mayor's office. If my family is okay, I'm okay. No, that's not enough. We need to be more than okay so we can take proper care of our family, because um, oftentimes women were kind of left aside in this, but now we need to, we know that we need to be, I mean, physically, mentally, economically, and training for that is quite important regardless of the academic level each one have. The mere fact they have an income, independent source of income is paramount. Thanks, Cassandra, for your opinion. Now, Jose Luis, what other recommendations could you share with us as a businessman so that the role of women can be considered more and more when it comes to environmental management in the private sector? Well, from my point of view, and I mentioned to Barry before, remember, well, two recommendations. The first one is organizational change in the company that involve the very top to the lower echelons. If the top management is not, let's say, focusing this, and no, and the workers are not trained in that, there will be kind of clash in between training and education, as Vanessa said, Cassandra said, and Vanessa as well highlighted its importance so the women are prepared to take management positions, steering positions, and they can start replacing that just for the mere fact of being men, they believe they are going to have that position forever. That's a way of thinking that should be, let's say, left aside. So, uh, meaning that we need to permeate that new organizational culture from the president or general manager to the worker and the production line. Thanks, Jose Luis and Tanya. What recommendations can you provide to so many women that are connected here with us, and to men, of course, why not, that are listening this transmission to overcome to overcome that obstacle of participation of women in the private sector, environmental and sustainability management? Well, I think we must take advantage of all trainings. This one, even that come from multilateral institutions, for instance, and finance and banking. Sustainability Week and Invest, for instance, is an important opportunity where we can learn everything that has to do with sustainability management, uh, all environmental aspects, and every year that event is quite important. Apart from that, the Eco Business Forum, the Financial Motion, to all banks, no, and the banks need to provide kind of training, tune-up information for each one role, not only for risks and businesses and sustainability, uh, and five with the specific course and specialized courses for all areas that we have heard of. And second recommendation would be that in each institution, financial institution in my case, can promote a greater participation or greater diversity part of the of high management, so that we can develop these new profiles and that only remain in social management now. And taking all this reference of women that have already taken these positions, we need to start preparing other women that right now are there so that they can occupy different positions. So many thanks, Tanya. Um, I only need to say that thank you for your recommendations, your ideas and reflections. I take with me the message of each one of you. We have gone from seeing women as receptors of help, persons subjects to vulnerability, to a new position of recognizing their role as agents of change in the fight for sustainability, that fight against climate change. It's important to recognize that and visualize their experience, their knowledge, um, training, as we have heard here, education, it's quite important. Each one of you mentioned that that applicable to the steering position, to decision makers as holders of different positions in all types of institutions. We have pleasure to have here the environment Minister for the Environment of Chile, for instance, with her words, encourage us to each country can unite to this commitment and to this new vision. And congratulations to all of you for your contributions. Uh, no, for the work you're doing in your country, and we have been able to know about that. Thanks for sharing that across the entire region. And finally, I want to thank the organizing group of this webinar, to my colleagues in Chile, from Honduras, Guatemala, and generally speaking to the regional working group about gender and environment, Latin America and Caribbean, to PNUMA, the United Nations, the facilitator of this, And this to the 6 panelists. Diana regrettably had to retire because of commitment. Vanessa, Andres, Cassandra, Jose Luis, Tania, to Jacqueline, and of course to Madam Mention Maisa Rojas, and to each one of you who are following this transmission. Thanks a lot to those of you that remain with us during the past almost 2 hours around the world. That's one of the advantages this type of events have. Even though we don't have that person-to-person contact, that is always important to have that warmth around us, that personal touch. These virtual transmissions make feasible for more persons to join. So we hope to have the next webinar of this regional working group about gender and violence for Latin America and the Caribbean to be with you as well. And as representative, I am very happy for having coordinated this event and panel. I invite you to remain in touch about the next events and activities. Have you all a happy day. Goodbye.